Hey guys, welcome to the first chapter of this Nimzo-Indian repertoire. We'll start by looking at one of the most critical lines against the Nimzo-Indian, which is the move E3. This is called the Rubinstein variation, named after the great player. This is one of the main lines here because I think it gives white a lot of scope to go for a number of different systems. He can go bishop d3, he can go knight g2. He has a lot of different options. He can always go for the move a3. So it's in general a very flexible move, and I think right now it is the most common move across all levels, especially when white players want to play for a win. So I think we need to be very well prepared against this. We go for the move short castle, and this is a theme across all the different fourth moves. Let's say queen c2 or whatever fourth move he plays except a3, we go for the move short castle first because I think it's the most flexible move. We have the option of going d5 or c5. Usually our play revolves around the move d5, but in some cases, like when opponent goes, for instance in the classical variation, we might go for the b6 bishop b7 system, and if opponent goes for something like early bishop g5, we go for the move c5. So broadly speaking, short castle makes a lot of sense as it is very flexible. Here we'll start by looking at the absolute mainland. So bishop d3, we go d5, he goes knight f3. He can also start with knight f3 and bishop d3. Doesn't make a huge difference, but I think bishop d3 is known to be the better move order as it cuts down on some of our options. We take dc4 here, bishop takes c4, c5, short castle, and knight c6. So actually the main line here is to play cd4, ed4, and b6. This is the Karpov variation, but this is also fine. It's been analyzed very deeply and the lines are completely fine for us. But I think we need to have some understanding of this IQP positions. You need to know how to play with the IQP, and it comes with its own set of challenges. And I think knight c6 is just more simpler, and also the advantage is that it is likely to take your opponent out of well-known theory. It's still quite played quite a few times, but much less than the main line. This is actually known as the Larsen variation. At least that's what I checked on Google. I think he's one of the first players who started playing this, and the point is that after a3 we go for the move bishop a5, so we don't take on c3 here, and we are just able to maintain the tension in the center. And the main reason why we go for this is because we don't want to allow him to get his bishop to g5. So what we do is we play the move h6 and then we take on d4, making sure that he never gets the move bishop g5. I think this is quite clever. So let's see different options for him. He has a ton of options here. Analyze like around 7 moves here. Let's start with some sidelines like knight e2. We take cd4. I think here already knight e2, the point is to take with the knight, but I don't really believe in this because after queen d4, knight d4, rook d8, I think only black can be better because bishop on c1. Okay, it's more or less equal, nothing much to play for here. Queen e2. Now white removes the queen from the center to get rook to d1. We take the chance, we take on d4, rook d1, and we will not give up this pawn so easily. We play e5, ed4, knight d4, knight d4, ed4, bishop g5. We play bishop g4, a nice move to provoke opponent to play the move f3. f3, start with a nice intermediate move, bishop c5, king h1. We go rook e8, bishop takes f6, queen f6, knight e4, queen g6. And I think we're enjoying our position. We have the bishop pair, and we can even take on e4 at some point if the queen moves away. And we're likely to get an opposite color bishop middle game, which is around about equal. This is for the move queen e2. Let's see the move h3. So this is quite common. Usually they start with a3, but h3 because they just don't understand the point of knight c6. They're used to us taking on d4. So let's play a useful waiting move. And what we do, we can play the move h6, but I think even better is just to play cd4, ed4, and b6. So now let's see the point. If he goes for the move bishop g5 here, bishop b7, I think h3 is just completely useless in these positions. We'll see with the variation starting with rook e1, bishop b7, bishop g5. We just play h6, bishop h4, rook c8. Now, usually white will have let's say, chances to play d5 or play something quick before we're able to get b6, bishop b7. But once we have managed to get everything, I think very good chance that black can take over the initiative. So usually playing against the IQP, what we need to do is get control over the d5 square. Usually by putting maybe knight b4, other knight to d5. We also have the bishop on b7 controlling the d5 square. And we should be careful about allowing white to play d5. Of course, there are ways white can just simplify the position with the more d5, but especially with the bishop on this diagonal, we should be careful not to allow d5 very easily. For example, let's see if we place the move bishop g5, bishop b7, and yeah, here d5 doesn't work because of knight a5. Nice move attacking the bishop on c4, and then we end up winning the pawn on d5 pretty easily. So rook e1, bishop b7, bishop g5, bishop h4, rook c8, bishop d3. We go bishop e7. We are preparing to go knight b4, and I think black is probably even slightly better here. So now rook e1. Now this doesn't make too much sense when we have not taken on d4, because the whole point is to try to get control over the semi-open e file. We play h6. We stop bishop g5 ideas. He plays h3. Now what we can do is take and go knight e7. Basically we have managed to stop his most critical idea, and we're also getting control over d5. So bishop f4, a6, a3, bishop a5. We want to go b5 and bishop b7. I think again black is doing very well. What else? Queen d3. Now white's idea is to play a3 and take the pawn on c5. We'll see what happens if he takes the pawn on c5 with the queen on d1. But queen d3, it's better because he can take with the bishop and get his bishop to d3, which is better than having the queen on d1. I mean rook on d1. Now we go knight a5. He goes d takes c5. White is forced to release the tension here, because if he goes bishop b5, we can just play a6, b5, bishop b7, maybe play c4. We're slightly better. So he takes knight d takes c5, we take bishop takes c5, queen d8, rook d8, bishop e2, knight c6, and the position is again completely equal. D takes c5. Now this is generally just an attempt to simplify the position, but I think there is a lot of play left here. We just take bishop takes c5. It's much more dangerous after inclusion of a3 and bishop a5. Now queen d8, rook d8. We can just go a6 and b5 next. We are the one with the extra move here. a3, we go bishop d6. I like to keep the queens on the board if possible. Queen e2, we go a6, and we want to go for the move b5 next. Rook d1, queen c7, bishop d2, go knight e5, bishop e5. Next b5, bishop b7 is coming up, and I think again black is doing very well. So dc5 doesn't lead to much. Now we go for the move a3. I think this is very likely to happen. Now we go bishop a5. Actually, let's start with the move dc5, because we just saw a similar variation. So now we take bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and actually the problem with this line compared to queen d3 line is that here we go for the move knight a5, and yeah, the queen would be better on d3 than on d1 right now, not queen takes d1. So after knight a5, white has a few options. If he takes on d8, rook d8, actually bishop e2, knight e4, black is just doing very well. We win one of the pawns and we have the better structure. Bishop b5, white is giving away control over the b3 square, so we just take, knight b3, rook b1, knight c5, a4, bishop d7, bishop a3, we take rook b5, rook d8, important move, and after rook takes d8, we get an equal position. g3, we can take on a4, and all the pawns on the queen side are likely to be traded off. Let's go back. Move bishop d3. White preserves the queens on the board, but it's not going to be the case for long. We are going after the c5 pawn, knight d7. We want a knight on c5. If he goes a4, knight takes c5, bishop a3, queen takes c3, bishop takes c5, queen d1, rook d1, rook e8, and the position again is roughly equal. Let's say bishop b4, knight c6, knight d4. Can take on b4. We improve his pawn structure, but we get our pieces out, and the endgame is completely fine for us. So yeah, if he takes on c5, we're able to take on c3. An important move is knight a5, after which the bishop, if it goes to a2, we're able to take on d1, go knight e4, win one of the pawns. If it goes to e2 or somewhere else, the problem is knight is coming to b3, goes to d3, then we get knight d7, knight takes c5, again attacking the bishop on d3. So now with dc5 out of the way, let's look at the other options. Okay, knight e2 has been played again a few times, but it's too slow. We just take on d4. ed4, the very common idea is to play h6, bishop f4, we play bishop c7. Another thing, playing against IQP, it's very useful to exchange pieces, because ideally what we want to get is major pieces against the pawn on, like playing against the pawn on d4. For example, a dream situation would be like rook on d5, queen d7, rook d8, putting pressure on d4, and even if we defend it 3 times, we always have the e5 break. So that is what we should be aiming for. As many minor pieces that are traded, better for us. So queen d2, we go bishop d7, rook e1, knight e7. Now we bring the knight to the d5 square, knight e5, bishop c6. This is another point after knight c6. Here we can take with the knight on c6, but also the b takes c6 is quite good because we are able to open the b file for a rook, and the pawn on c6 cannot really be attacked compared to the pawn on d4. You can go rook b8, start play a5, start putting pressure on the b file. But here knight c6 is completely fine. So he goes knight g3. We can go bishop a5. We want to provoke the move b4. So b4, bishop b6, bishop e3, knight e4. We exchange the knights, and yeah, we get extremely good control over the d5 square. So maybe put the bishop on d5, knight on f5. Black is doing extremely well. Let's go back. Now knight d4, again just take on d4, knight d4, and here we can start playing for the initiative with the move e5, b4, bishop b6, knight b5, bishop g4, bishop e2. I like the move h5. We'll go queen e7 next, bring both the rooks towards the center. I think black has a great position. Now let's go to the move bishop a2. Here we play the move h6. This is our usual plan. We just stop the move bishop g5. Again, as I mentioned several times before, prepare to go cd4. Queen c2. This doesn't make much sense. We just take rook d1. We go e5. Now rook e1. Now this is interesting. Here, I don't want to take on d4 immediately because let's say cd4, ed4, our usual bishop c7, white plays bishop e3, b6, and here he has a very strong move d5. So I think this is something we should be careful about. We can still go for this, play knight e5 first and then play b6. But I like also the move queen d7. So I think this is very clever because our idea is we want to get the rook to d8, get control over the d file. Now if we take dc5, we take on c3, we take c3, queen d1, rook d1, knight e4. Now we kind of, I think, transposed almost to the variation which we saw earlier. White is wasted to move with rook e1, rook d1, we have wasted to move with queen d7, queen d1. So it balances it out. So queen d7 is very nice after rook e1. Otherwise, let's say after bishop b1, here, nice idea is to take and go bishop b6. Provoke bishop e3, now go knight e7, get the knight to f5, force him to kind of take on f5, get ef5, bishop e6, knight d5, and get a good position. Let's go to the move h3. Again, as I mentioned already, this is very common. We play h6. Here again, there are many options. d5 is not good. ed5, knight d5, bishop f5, black is better. This bishop on c1 is really bad. dc5, we take, go knight e4. Again, we win back one of the pawns with a better pawn structure. Bishop a2, cd4, ed4, bishop c7 should be very familiar to you. Rook e1. And usually, as a thumb rule in these positions, we almost always go knight e7 first before b6. Unless we are extremely sure that he cannot play d5, we don't start with the move d5, b6, because b6 again here d5 is better for white slightly. So we go knight e7, knight e5. Here b6 is very natural, but the problem with b6 is the move queen f3. So I think better is to go knight f5 here. We attack the pawn on d4, and this is like we exploit the drawback of the move knight e5. It was defending the pawn on d4. Here we attack it. So knight f5, he can go d5. Bishop e3, we just go b6 now. Queen f3, rook b, it actually works because knight c6, we have this move knight h4. And after queen d1, queen d6, we are going queen h2, queen g2. So very nice idea. So after rook b8, actually we're able to get the bishop to b7, and then the position is completely fine for black. Now d5, white just simplifies the position. ed4, knight, ed5, knight d5, just take. You can go queen f6, and I think the position is roughly equal. So this is what I really like about this position, is that our plan is very simple. It's very consistent across all the lines. Bishop d3, the same, cd, ed, bishop c7, bishop e3. Here we can go start with knight e7. Now with the bishop on d3, d5 is not a threat, so we go b6, queen d2, knight e7, rook c1, bishop b7, d5, knight d5, bishop takes h6. Okay, white is going for some mating attack on the king side, but of course it's not going to work. She takes h6, queen h6, knight f4, and here he absolutely has to take the draw with queen g5 and queen h6 back with perpetual check. He cannot try anything else, like let's say knight g5. Okay, d3 is just hanging here, so nothing to be worried about at all. So let's go back. Now the move queen d3. This is possible also on the previous move. And we do the same. Oh no, actually we take cd4 here. We can do the same with a6. But it's just cd4. When we have the option to do this, why not? cd4, ed4, bishop c7. Now rook d1, we go knight e7, we stop d5, knight e5, b6, queen f3, rook b8. And again, the same thing. Knight b5, just bishop b7, and we get control over d5. Bishop d2, we can even start with b6. It's not an issue. Or knight e7 first. Okay, rook e1 now. Here we go knight e7, as I mentioned. Don't play b6 because of the move. Actually here g4. I was about to say d5, but then I realized d5 is not the biggest issue here, because after d5 we can take knight d5, knight d5, bishop d5. You already bishop b7. Everything is fine, but there is actually this amazing move g4 here, and it's actually quite dangerous, because how do we stop the threat of just g5 and head g5, bishop g5, pin along the diagonal? So we start with knight e7. Now of course g4 doesn't make sense. Weakens f4 and the whole queen set. If knight e5, we go knight f5 first, attack the weak pawn on d4, bishop e3. Now we can go start with b6, or start with a6, a4, then go b6. Get our bishop to b7 with a great position. So bishop d2, b6, rook d1, bishop b7, knight e5, a6, bishop c1, b5, bishop a2, rook c8. We managed to get all our pieces to the ideal squares, whereas white has not yet started his play on the king side. Next, we can go for the move bishop to a5. We can go knight f d5, get this knight to f5. I think we're doing very well here. This is for the move h3. Now, let's see the move bishop d3. White reroutes his bishop to another diagonal, but this does release the pressure on the d5 pawn. In fact, it maybe increases the pressure on the d4 pawn. We play h6. dc5, this we have to consider a bit more seriously, because here we don't trade queens, but instead we take on c3, b takes c3, and go for the move e5. Our threat is e4, and after Say bishop b5, your queen e7, attack the pawn on c5, queen d6, rook e8. Our plan is to go knight e4 next, and after queen e7, rook e7, we'll win the pawn on c5 with completely fine position. So a4, knight a4, knight e4, queen e7, rook e7, bishop a3, bishop f5. There's no need to hurry. We'll go rook c8 next. We'll slowly go after the c5 pawn. c3 is also weak. Rook d1, a6, bishop c6, bc6, rook c1, a5. Just look at this bishop on a3, just completely boxed in. We can go f6 even next. And mainly we're going to play around the b file. We'll definitely win one of these two pawns in the very near future. So this is bishop b5. If queen c2, we go queen d5, rook d1, queen takes c5, a4. Now we get rid of the c3 weakness, but we win one of the bishops, which is very important. Bishop takes e4, knight takes e4, queen takes e4, queen c3, bishop d2, queen f6. And yeah, black is doing very well. It's completely fine for black. Furthermore, d takes c5. Knight e4, we take on d4, ed4, and go bishop b6. Again, we put pressure on the d4 pawn. Bishop e3. Now, not knight e7, but instead we have the chance to go knight g4. And we win the dark side bishop for sure, because otherwise d4 is just hanging. Something like bishop b5, just bishop d7, followed by maybe a6 next, knight e7 then. Get the knight to d5, take on e3 at the right moment. Bishop c4, bishop d7, knight c5, queen c7, b4, knight e3, fe3. Here we can give up the bishop pair, bishop c5, bc5, go b6. And after cb6, ab6, I think we get our queen to d6 and we have a perfectly fine position. In fact, I think white's king is the one which is slightly more exposed, especially in the long run. Now bishop c2. It should be obvious to you. cd4, ed4, bishop c7, rook e1. Now we play b6, queen d3, knight e7. We bring the knight to f3, f5 very quickly. In fact, we have to be careful not to play bishop b7 because knight e4 is very good, because knight e4, queen e4, and you cannot really stop mate on h7. So that's why we bring our knight to e7 first. Now knight e4, you can go knight f5 and knight f6, queen f6. That is completely fine. g4, we just go queen g6. And yeah, we have no issues. Black is clearly better actually there. So knight e5, knight f5 again, bishop e3, bishop b7, rook d1, bishop takes e5. We decide to simplify the position. We could also play on, we could go queen e7. Maybe he goes f4, tries to create something on the king side. So it's just much simpler to just take on e5, queen d3, bishop d3, take on e3, rook e3, knight d5, and we reach a completely even endgame. Oh, bishop e3, b6 again, d5 is nothing to worry about because bishop on c2, queen d2, knight e7, rook d1, again knight f5, bishop takes f5, e takes f5, d5, we can go knight e4, get the bishop to d6, rook to e8 next, and I think again black is doing well. We have seen so many moves, main plan of h6 followed by cd4, bishop c7. Now let's look at the move queen d3. Here, let's see what happens if we do the same with h6. Let's say he plays rook d1, you take, bishop c7. All of this is possible, but I think maybe here he has some chances. Let's say bishop d2. If we go knight e7, he's going knight e4. Still, it's all still good for black. Even the any different move I make, it just says black is fine. So nothing much to worry about for us. But I think here we can play a6. This is just clever because we're exploiting the move queen d3. We want to go b5, c4, 1 is one big idea here. Knight e4, yeah, b5, knight f6, queen f6. If the bishop goes back, c4, black is just better. Instead, he has to find this move queen e4. Bishop b7, bishop d3. We go g6, dc5. Now an important move, knight b4. We get rid of the important bishop on d3. So queen takes, yeah, queen b7, knight d3 is fine. Queen e5, queen takes e5, knight takes e5, knight d3, rook d8, and we have full compensation. We can even go f6, e5, completely restrict the bishop on c1, and our light squares are looking very dangerous for white. For the move knight e4. Now rook d1. This is a very common move, the most common move here, but it is actually an inaccuracy because it allows us to show our idea b5, bishop a2, and c4. I think many players just underestimate this structure. So queen e2, knight e7. Now our idea next is to probably take on c3, go knight e4, get a blockade going on the center. He goes e4 himself. Now we play knight g6, h3, bishop b7, and I think black has the initiative. Even though white has control over the center, we can go for moves like knight h5, knight f4 next, and we're doing extremely well. Now d takes c5. So final way in which black can win the pawn. We take on d3, bishop takes d3, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, knight a5. A threat is clear, knight to b3. If bishop c2 to stop it, we go bishop d7, we'll go rook of c8 and slowly go after the pawn on c5. So let's say a4, rook c8, bishop a3, we have knight c4 and rook b1, knight a3, rook a3. We play rook b8, we win the pawn on c5 next. Black is doing well. So e4, bishop c6, rook e1, knight d7, bishop e3, knight c4, and bishop f4. There we're not afraid of ghosts. We just take on c5, bishop d6, knight b3, rook b1, rook d8. And he has to either play e5 or take his bishop back. e5, we take, bishop takes f3. If g takes f3, we have knight d2, and we win at least one exchange back. And if bishop takes b3, we have knight b3, rook b3, bishop c6 with a completely equal endgame. Knight d4, rook c8, knight c6, rook c6, bishop a4, we go rook c7, preparing knight c5, bishop f4, e5, bishop g3, f6, c6, knight c6. And the position is roughly equal. White has the bishop pair, but at the same time c3 is a big weakness, and our knights are actually doing a pretty good job of holding down the position. Yeah, so now we go to the move rook b1, stops knight b3 again. We go rook d8 first, knight e5, and here important move to remember, which is the move knight to d7. We want to exchange white's active knight and also improve our own bishop. So knight takes d7, bishop takes d7. Now if e4, we go bishop a4. The d3 bishop blacks a good square. So bishop e2, we go bishop c2, rook b4, bishop d3. We trade the bishops. And yeah, all of white's pawns are weak on the queen side. Rook b4. Now we go rook a c8, e4, rook takes c5, c4. My opponent actually, this happened in one of my games, and my opponent was just blitzing out his moves all the time, which was very annoying for me. But I think the margin of safety here is too high, so even if we make a decent inaccuracy according to the computer, it still is probably close to equal. So I played correctly, I played more or less fine. So rook c8, we are planning to go for e5 and bishop to e6. White goes bishop e2. Now if we go e5, bishop e3, bishop e6, this is fine. c5, we can go for this. Rooks, play double the rooks. But instead I like much more simpler is knight c6, rook takes b7, knight d4, bishop d3, bishop c6, rook b2, knight f3, gf3, rook d3. And this position is bound to end in a draw very soon with opposite color bishops on the board. So yeah, I think this is the simplest move. Of course, there are moves like bishop e2, b5, which is very interesting, which is what I prepared before that game, but I forgot. So cb5, rook c2, rook e1, bishop b5, and the position is again full compensation. So I think that's more or less it for this chapter. We saw this very common plan across almost all of the moves, which is after he plays, let's say, bishop d3, play h6 first, and then we take on d4, play bishop to c7. Sometimes we go bishop b6, knight e7, knight f5. Usually we go bishop c7, knight e7, b6, bishop b7, and then knight to f5. And I think there is nothing much to worry about. It's kind of gone out of practice right now. So thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.